Inflation is now projected to be higher and growth lower than the assessment during February. Economic activity, although recovering, is barely above its pre-pandemic level. Against this backdrop, the MPC decided to retain the repo rate at 4%. It also decided to remain accommodative while focusing on withdrawal of accommodation to ensure that inflation remains within the target going forward while supporting growth. I would now like to provide our assessment of growth and inflation. And first, I would take up growth. According to the second advance estimates released by the National Statistics Office, NSO, on February 28, real GDP rose by 8.9% in 21-22. Private consumption and fixed investment, key drivers of the domestic demand, however, remain subdued, with these two components being only 1.2% and 2% respectively above their pre-pandemic levels. On the supply side, contact-intensive services still trail the 2019-20 level. Nevertheless, the Indian economy is steadily reviving from its pandemic-induced contraction. During 21-22, weaknesses in economic activity resurfaced in third quarter and got exacerbated by emergence of the Omicron variant in January 2022. A gradual turnaround has been noticed during February, although in March, a mixed picture was seen. Some contact-intensive activities have regained traction amidst declining infections and removal of restrictions. Several high-frequency indicators, namely railway freight, GST collections, toll collections, electricity demand, fuel consumption, and imports of capital goods, posted robust year-on-year expansion during the months of February and March. With the easing of restrictions, domestic air passenger traffic rebounded in the month of March. According to our surveys, consumer confidence is improving and households' optimism in outlook for the year ahead has strengthened with an uptick in sentiments. Business confidence is in optimistic territory and supportive of revival in economic activity. On the other hand, passenger vehicle sales and registrations continue to contract, although at a moderating pace. Both manufacturing and services PMIs remain in the zone of expansion. While manufacturing PMI moderated slightly in March, services and composite PMI showed improvement. Going forward, robust Rabi output should support recovery in rural demand, while a pickup in contact-intensive services should help in further strengthening urban demand. Investment activity may gain traction with improving business confidence, pickup in bank credit, continuing support from government capex, and congenial financial conditions. Capacity utilization in the manufacturing sector recovered further to 72.4%, that is 72.4% in third quarter 21-22 from 68.3% in the previous quarter, surpassing the pre-pandemic level of 69.9% in the fourth quarter of 2019-20. As the horizon was brightening up, escalating geopolitical tensions have cast a shadow on our economic outlook. Although India's direct trade exposure to the countries at the epicenter of the conflict is limited, the war could potentially impede the economic recovery through elevated commodity prices and global spillover channels. Further, financial market volatility induced by monetary policy normalization in advanced economies, renewed COVID-19 infections in some major countries with augmented supply-side disruptions and protracted shortages of critical inputs such as semiconductors and chips pose downside risks to the growth outlook. Taking all these into consideration, all these factors that I have just explained in the previous 5 to 6 minutes, taking all these into consideration, real GDP growth for the year 2022-23, that is the current financial year 22-23, is now projected at 7.2%. I repeat, 7.2%, with Q1 22-23 at 16.2%, Q2 at 6.2%, Q3 at 4.1%, and Q4 at 4%, assuming crude oil, that is Indian basket, at $100 per barrel during the year 2022-23. Let me now turn to inflation. In February 2022 meeting of the MPC, we had projected a moderating path of inflation during 22-23. Heightened geopolitical tensions since end February have, however, upended the earlier narrative and considerably clouded the inflation outlook for the year. On the food price front, a likely record Rabi harvest would help to keep domestic prices of cereals and pulses in check. Global factors such as loss of wheat supply from the Black Sea region and the unprecedented high international prices of wheat could, however, put a floor under domestic prices of wheat. Edible oil price pressures are likely to remain elevated in the near term due to export restrictions by key producers, as well as loss of supply from the Black Sea region. Feed cost pressures could continue due to global supply shortages, which could also have a spillover impact on poultry, milk, and dairy product prices. Coming to non-food items, the spike in international crude oil prices since end February poses substantial upside risk to inflation through both direct and indirect effects. Sharp increase in domestic pump prices could trigger broad-based second-round price pressures. A combination of high international commodity prices and elevated logistic disruptions could aggravate input costs across agriculture, manufacturing, and the services sectors. Their pass-through to retail prices, therefore, warrants continuous monitoring and proactive supply management. Financial markets are likely to remain volatile on rising risk premia, dislocations in trade and capital flows, and divergent monetary policy responses across central banks. Taking into account these factors, and on the assumption of a normal monsoon during 2022, and average crude oil price, that is the Indian basket, at $100 per barrel, 100 per barrel, inflation is now projected at 5.7%. I repeat, inflation is now projected at 5.7% in 2022-23, with Q1 at 6.3%, Q2 at 5%, Q3 at 5.4%, and Q4 at 5.1%. It may, however, be noted that given the excessive volatility in global crude oil prices since late February and the extreme uncertainty over the evolving geopolitical tensions, any projection of growth and inflation is fraught with risk and is largely contingent upon future oil and commodity price developments. In this context, continuation and deepening of supply-side measures may alleviate food price pressures and also mitigate cost push pressures across manufacturing and services. On our part, let me assure all stakeholders that, as in the past, the Reserve Bank will use all its policy levers to preserve macroeconomic stability and enhance the resilience of our economy. The situation is dynamic and fast-changing, and our actions have to be tailored accordingly.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.